The title screen of Cairn immediately sets this kind of reflective tone. It shows Alex gazing over this loch in the Scottish Highlands. So from the very start, this indie JRPG, which thank you Ross McRitchie for sending me a Steam key, and sorry I got back so late. I haven't even checked that email. I had a lot going on. I haven't checked my YouTube email in a while, so it was sitting in there. But regardless, I was really looking forward to playing this game. But right off the bat, you can tell that this game wears its heart on its sleeve. And Cairn Mathair's Curse was released in October 2025 on Steam, and it's a story-driven RPG about family and loss and growing up, and it's all filtered through this very distinctly Scottish lens, even though I don't think in the game they ever call it Scotland. So in Cairn, you play as Alex, a young boy from this fictional country of Albanese, and Albanese is a stand-in for Scotland, the Scottish Highlands. When a mysterious cult unleashes this ancient curse on his homeland, on his home, he's thrust into this grand adventure, this journey that's equal parts kind of whimsical and poignant. And it took me roughly almost 25 hours to beat. And you'll kind of take control of Alex and his friends, and there's turn-based battles and puzzle solving and a little bit of exploration. And the game is packed with Scottish references, most of which I didn't get, but in the context of the game, they were still pretty funny. It had this quirky humor and super, super heartfelt storytelling, which the developer, Ross, kind of drew on his own personal life. And first off, drawing on your own life is always the best way to tell an emotional and great story. The result is a charming retro JRPG that balances its pros and cons pretty thoughtfully. Its narrative and setting really do shine with originality and feeling and heart, but its gameplay sticks a bit too close to genre conventions, in my opinion. But despite some rough edges, Cairn proves to be probably my second favorite JRPG of the year. There's a quiet character moment in the game as Alex's mother imparts some heartfelt wisdom. And at its core, like I said, Cairn is a very personal story. In fact, Ross McRitchie was inspired by his own family experiences with grief, and he dedicated the game to his mom and his grandmother. So yeah, this deeply personal touch is really oozing through the entire game, and you can feel it, even though I didn't necessarily know that it was based on his own life at first. You can feel that passion kind of just oozing through, and the bond between Alex and his mom forms the emotional backbone of the game. And what really stands out is how heartfelt and earnest the storytelling is. The game isn't afraid to deal with grief head on. There's kind of like these dreamlike sequences where Alex is processing all these difficult feelings, and conversations with NPCs that kind of touch on coping with losing, loved ones. And despite all this, the game never becomes so overbearingly dark or dreary or melodramatic, which is would have been really easy for it to do with all these kind of heavy subjects. But it's really punctuated with a lot of moments of warmth and hope. And there's this genuine sense of care in how the narrative unfolds. And you can tell the story comes from a real place, which makes its emotional beats hit even harder. And one late game scene, without any specific spoilers, had me reflecting kind of on my own family. And it's a testament on how effectively the game invites players to connect with its themes. But most importantly, the game takes all these heavy themes and it balances with it with a lot of humor and quirkiness, which probably was my favorite part, because like in the style of Earthbound and Undertale, a lot of the heavy stuff is balanced out. And you can really tell that Cairn follows in those footsteps of the giants like Earthbound, with like these witty one-liners and just absurd, completely absurd situations that happen alongside these very sincere moments. Admittedly, at times the game leans very heavily on its influences. I mean, you could see a screenshot of this game and completely mistake it for Earthbound. And anybody who's ever played Earthbound or even seen Earthbound will immediately pick up on that. The same goes for Undertale. It has a lot of that Undertale heartfelt weirdness to it. And Cairn doesn't always establish a completely unique narrative voice beyond like Scottish Earthbound. But while it echoes a lot of those classic games, it ultimately uses those familiar elements as a foundation for its own story. And thanks to the sincerity of its personal inspirations and the cultural kind of flavor that it's cooking in, Cairn's story does end up feeling distinctly its own despite its obvious influences. And by the time, I beat the game, I wasn't really thinking about how it reminded me of those other games, which is a good thing. I was thinking about Alex and his family and the entire journey I just kind of went on. And that is a testament to the game itself. Because let me interject myself here by saying I started playing this game as Scottish Earthbound, right? But by the end of the game, I wasn't really thinking about Earthbound at all. It was just Cairn. So that's I went about saying that in a very weird way, but take from that as you will. Now, I kind of want to talk about the setting and the world building. So if the emotional storyline is Cairn's heart, then its setting is definitely the soul of the game, because the game's set in this mythical land of Albanese, like I said, which is basically a love letter to the Scottish Highlands. Now, how do I know that? I don't. I'm taking Ross McRitchie, the most Scottish name of all, as my guide, because I don't know anything about the Scottish Highlands, but I would imagine it's something along these lines. The setting feels refreshingly unique for a JRPG. No futuristic cities or medieval castles. It's just these quaint little towns and forests, and you'll explore these coastal villages and these moors and ancient stone circles, and even some high-tech lairs hidden beneath old ruins. And it's a world that is really steeped in Celtic mythology and Scottish culture. And I'm not an expert on those things. I'm just kind of extrapolating what I'm seeing in the game into real life. Yeah, so one minute you're chatting about fairies and stuff with an NPC, and the next you're walking through this glen that does look like it's straight out of a picture of Scotland. And I absolutely loved that part of the game. In the beginning of Cairn, there's you get back to your house. This is the opening tutorial section. You get back to your house and the sun's beginning to set, and you're at the top of this, are they even called highlands? I don't know, cliff or something, I don't know. But you're up there in the sky, and your house is overlooking the ocean, and it's just, and the music's playing. Man, there's something that really hits about that. Like I said, you could tell it really comes from a passionate place, and it's very sincere. It doesn't feel like some industry plant JRPG, which I've played a few. Yeah, it just, I don't know. It's a feeling that you get. It's a vibe that you get. And I think it just comes from the sincerity of the developer. Speaking of music, I'm pretty sure that there's like 9 different battle themes and they're all like fiddles and bagpipes. I love the music in this game. I'm not going to pretend like I know about music. All I know is I love retro RPG music. It's something that the lack of grandness isn't there because you don't have like these full orchestras. But what it is it's super, you can take that grandness and kind of distill it down into its purest form because of the nature of the 16-bit era, so to speak. And yeah, I absolutely love the music. Now, when it comes to gameplay, Cairn sticks to the JRPG fundamentals, like for better or worse, and the combat system will immediately be familiar to anyone who's played Earthbound. You just take turns, trading damage, and it has a Final Fantasy X sort of like conditional turn-based gauge in the top right. Each character has their basic attack and defend options, and items to use, and some special skills unique to their personality or class. And like, for instance, Alex, being the young dreamer that he is, can unleash some pretty imaginative-based spells, while Graham, who is kind of the book nerd, has a bookworm ability, and so on and so on and so on. And the upside of this kind of traditional approach is that it feels comfortable and nostalgic and straightforward, and it's pretty easy to not mess it up. Not every RPG needs a crazy gimmick, and there's something very relaxing about Cairn's kind of old school approach or take. And the downside is it can feel very, very derivative and too easy at times. Cairn doesn't really establish like a distinct mechanical identity of its own. Unlike its obvious inspirations, like Earthbound had the rolling HP bar or meter and like the super psychedelic effects, and Undertale broke, well, a lot of molds, but with its kind of like dodging, like bullet hell dodging mechanics and morality system. And Cairn, compared to them, plays it very safe. After the first few hours, you've basically seen how the combat's going to be for the rest of the game. There's no big like twists. There's no like timed hits or job switching or anything like that. You just get stronger and stronger as you go, and that is the most classic form of the JRPG that you can get. And there's nothing really wrong with it, but there's also nothing really like crazy about it either. It's not anything to write home about. It just is what it is. Now, outside of combat, there's a world to explore and a few other gameplay elements. The game features a little bit of puzzle solving and exploration challenges throughout. You might find keys to open doors or solve a riddle, or just have like these old school kind of like switch puzzles. They're never like too obtuse or difficult. They're there to kind of break up the pacing and kind of add as like a little bit of a wrinkle to the game that you're playing. And I enjoy those things. I don't need a puzzle to kind of keep me up all night. When it comes to equipment and character customization, Cairn again keeps it pretty basic. Each character can equip, a weapon and some armor, and you'll find or buy upgrades as you go. However, there's not a whole lot of depth to the equipment system. It's just straight stat upgrade from one piece of gear to the next. There's not a whole lot to like tinker with. If you're hoping to like min-max your party, not happening here. Now for me, and I've read a couple of other people's reviews. I don't know if it was just me, but like the difficulty balance for me. Now I have to preface this by saying the key that Ross sent me was a pre-release build. I don't know if it was updated, but I thought the beginning of the game, the difficulty balance, I thought the beginning of the game was really hard. And then it like plateaued, and then it got really, really easy. And I don't think there's anything inherently good or bad about that. It's just something that I noticed, because I actually preferred it being a little bit on the harder side, because in JRPGs, it's so easy to get bored because you're just rolling enemies and bosses all the time. I actually prefer the beginning difficulty, where I was kind of struggling to just beat these God, what were they? They're like these little like fruit flies or something, and they can like spawn like 5 of them. I was like having trouble with those, and I actually preferred that over towards the end of the game, when you're kind of beginning to just kind of like stampede over all the enemies and stuff. So if you played the game, let me know if you had the same problem. So to wrap up, look, I really want to highlight what I love about Cairn, because it's a great example of what like a solo developer with some really deep personal experiences can achieve by drawing on that experience and their kind of cultural heritage. And like I said, after I spending like, I don't know, it's like 20 to 25 hours playing Cairn, I came away thoroughly impressed. I don't even think impressed is the right word. It's like, I don't know. The game has so much heart, and I'm so big on the feeling of a game, especially a JRPG, more than like the actual like mechanics of it. Because it's not like, it doesn't reinvent the JRPG wheel, and it doesn't really need to, obviously. Instead, it feels like a love letter to classic RPGs. It feels like a love letter to kind of like the mothers and the grandmothers of the world, and even the family unit. It feels like a love letter to Scotland. Its greatest strengths lie in the heartfelt narrative and the Scottish Highland setting, and the story had me genuinely invested in Alex and his family, and occasionally hitting these emotional notes that, I don't know, very few games that I've played in this budget range ever managed to capture. And the world of Albanese is really fun to explore, and it's full of charm and humor and folklore that gave it its really own distinct flavor. And the awesome like soundtrack definitely reinforces the game's identity like every second that you're playing it. And of course, no game is perfect. Like I said, I'm not like over the moon about the battle system. I think it's good, but it's good because it's the same battle system I've been playing my entire life. The like the equipment and the kind of leveling experience is very standard. It's very simplistic, and for better or worse, you guys let me know in the comments. It wears its inspirations on its sleeve. I actually think that's a good thing, because it's not like its inspirations are these crappy games. I mean, it's Earthbound and Undertale, so it's like, you know, so if you're gonna like be inspired by something, make it the best of the best. And yeah, I would consider, you know, kind of like wrapping up, I would consider Cairn this very casual yet poignant JRPG that completely nails what it sets out to do. It invites you into this very charming world inspired by the Scottish Highlands, and it makes you laugh with its like talking stop signs, and it tugs at your heart with this story of love and loss and family, and it pays homage to the 90s classics all the while. So it probably doesn't revolutionize the genre, but it doesn't have to, because the game is so freaking, it's so sincere, and its personality shines so bright that it absolutely just triumphs as its own game, as its own identity. Look, I think if you have like a soft spot for retro RPGs, or like just appreciate games that have a strong personal voice, Cairn's like definitely worth the time, and it's definitely worth picking up because I don't know, it's one of the most, how do I say this without being corny? It's just one of the most, it made me just feel something, you know, it just made me feel something that I definitely will say a lot of modern JRPGs don't make me feel. It's all about the bombast and the spectacle of it all. And this feels quieter, but quieter in the absolutely best way. Remember the old game, what was it, Game Pros? Where they would rate the game and it had fun factor. I give this fun factor 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, it's really good. Pick it up. I definitely recommend it. Anyways, take care. Thank you again, Ross McRitchie, for sending the code out. You guys, God bless. Have an amazing day.